Lindsay.
Moby.
Bagel.
Moby.
So today, on the Moby Pod Popular Entertainment Program, we're going to be talking to one of my dear friends who's also arguably the most successful DJ in DJ history, Armin van Buuren.
He is wildly, wildly successful. He really has changed the game in so many ways. But one of the exciting reasons why we had him on now is because you guys did something really fun together.
Oh, so we DJ'd together a while ago, maybe once or twice. And then earlier in 2024, he reached out to me because he had done a remix of the song Extreme Ways. And I was like, okay, how does one do a big club trance version of Extreme Ways? And he sent it through to me, and I was kind of blown away.
I mean, it's really cool what he does, and I've seen video of the performance. I think he opens with it when he does shows, and he has this like huge projection of you behind him, and that's how he's opening his shows now, with this amazing remix.
So that just came out, which is sort of, I guess, one of the reasons why we're going to talk to Armin. But also, even more importantly than that, is Armin is smart and has dealt with a lot of mental health issues and is incredibly insightful.
Yes, it was really, really fascinating, but also to have him here and knowing how accomplished this man is. I mean, he's obviously, he's a DJ, he's a producer. He also hosts this a radio show called State of Trance. That's a massive, massive radio show.
He sold out Madison Square Garden.
He sold out Madison Square Garden.
Just as one person. Oh, by the way, Bagel her tail is hitting the microphone.
She's like, is this thing on?
We can just pretend that's DJing.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Okay, you want to come back up here? Come on.
So, sold out Madison Square Garden, and he was DJ Magazine's DJ of the Year 5 times.
In 4 consecutive years.
I don't fully understand chronologically how that works.
But it's impressive.
Still 5 times as DJ of the Year, voted by the readers. Bagel's also rubbing up against your microphone. So in any case, I don't know if we've accomplished the height of professionalism I was sort of aspiring towards.
I think, it's a journey, baby steps.
Okay, but in any case, let's stop with our professional introduction and let's go talk to Armin.
Yay.
I have a million questions for you.
Let's go.
I also have a million questions for you.
I'm excited to be here.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So, Armin, I just have to say I'm really grateful that you stopped by because you might be the busiest person ever.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I feel honored. I mean, I'm a big fan. I read your bio, which was a great read, by the way. I recognize a lot, and you feel like one of the founders of the things that I still do today. I know you're still performing as well. We're happy to see that, but yeah, I just thought. I mean, I just did this radio show, and we had Chris Stussey's version of Go on, and I introduced it as this is one of the very first tunes I danced to myself. So this is 92, I think, when Go came out. And I remember I was 16, 17 years old, and it's one of the very first tunes that made me realize why the hell my higher power put me on this planet. You know what I mean? Because it now makes sense. It's no coincidence, I think, I was born in 1976, which is, I think, around the year that the Technics turntable, the SL1200 turntable was invented, but also the year that Roland's TR-909 was invented and Star Wars came. I mean, it's like my higher power said, you need to come to Earth because there's a lot of interesting stuff happening.
And also, that was right in the middle of disco and possibly when the single greatest electronic music song of all time was released. I Feel Love by Dinosaur.
Absolutely. Like Patrick Cowley's version.
I every now and then when I'm DJing, I'll play I Feel Love and I'll be like, wow, there's been a lot of amazing electronic music since then. How is it that this is still the best?
It's so true.
But I want to get into music and electronics and science fiction and everything.
And we will.
But
it will happen.
And I have to, it's hard because I want to jump into that right now, but I also want to know who you are and where you're from. And like when I get to know people, it's really nice to sort of, we start at the very beginning. Like, where were you born and when?
Well, first of all, I'm from the Netherlands, which is the capital of Denmark. We always make that joke. And it's a small city. My dad was a doctor, a GP.
Where?
In a small city called Koudekerk, which is, I would say, about 25 minutes south of Amsterdam.
Okay, so is that, I'm just going to throw out some, is that near Hilversum at all?
No, okay. It's about an hour drive. Well, Holland is really small. If you drive anywhere from Holland, you know, you're in Germany or in Belgium or even further. It's I would like to say I'm a European, not so much a Dutch person. Although I love the Dutch culture and I'm super proud of to be Dutch. You know, but my dad had to work really hard and he didn't have such an easy childhood as I did. But my dad was listening to like really obscure music at the time, Klaus Schulze, Vangelis, Jean-Michel Jarre, which was, in hindsight, the first electronic music. And as a kid, I was fascinated. I remember there's pictures of me in my diaper staring at my dad's reel-to-reel machine.
Oh, so he was an audiophile.
Yeah.
Like
what is a reel-to-reel machine?
A reel-to-reel, well, it can mean many things. It's basically open reel tape. So usually it was 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 2 inch. It's basically, that's the width of the tape. A cassette, for example, is a reel-to-reel, but inside a little plastic cassette housing.
I see.
So back in the...
So did you just buy a reel?
But they're big reels. And you would, if you were an audiophile back then, it was the only way to listen to an uninterrupted album.
Oh, because otherwise you're flipping a...
Yeah, so
or
like,
it's a different track.
So in the 50s, probably 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even into the 80s, the real audiophiles primarily listened to reel-to-reel. And so you'd have like walls of albums on reel-to-reel. And your dad was clearly one of them.
And I was, we lived in this old house, beautiful house next to the Rhine River. And it had wooden floors, cardboard floors. And my room was exactly above the room where my dad would used to listen to this electronic music really loud. And he used to drink a little, and then he'd turn up the music really loud. And my mom was always super afraid that I would wake up. And I woke up, but I found that feeling very comfortable because I could only hear like the bass and the mids a little bit. I couldn't hear the highs, but I just love that feeling, knowing that they were home, I was safe, and listening to these weird electronic sounds, which were at the time very, very, very experimental. I mean, I still don't understand why my dad loved that music. Tangerine Dream, Klaus Schulze, you know.
I mean, it was the music of the future. It sounded like this clean, amazing. It was basically science fiction in musical form.
Absolutely. Well, I always like to point out this fact that in the 60s, the synthesizer was regarded by many people as not a musical instrument. You know, the synthesizer was invented, of course, 1940s, 50s and stuff. It was an experiment by a lot of people in white coats. And you would be crazy to call that the Moog synthesizer an instrument. For a long time, people considered a guitar, an electric guitar, you know, the Beatles, that's it. Until the Beatles started using a Moog synthesizer on the White Album, and, you know, Walter Carlos switched on Bach came, all of a sudden, electronic music was considered, hey, maybe this is interesting. Maybe you should look at this. And some people pioneered it, and that's how we know now electronic music. You know, it's pretty strange to see actually where it comes from and what it's now.
In history.
It's funny. So Lindsay and I have a film and TV production company, and one of the projects we first wanted to do, and we didn't do, and now you're reminding me maybe we should do it, was a history of electronic music, because you're right, it started in the early 20th century with academics, you know, at Bell Labs, at Princeton, you know, at Oxford, making just sound.
On giant computers that take up like...
Yeah. And it's so, what's especially fascinating, and we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit, is how it went from like 6 white guys in white coats at Princeton to suddenly becoming hip hop and becoming house music. And it became the most egalitarian form of music in the world, whereas at one point it was those 5 guys in lab coats in a laboratory at Princeton just making space age sounds.
Like the least accessible to the most accessible.
And so I'm really fascinated. This early electronic music, and Lindsay, because Lindsay's younger, than me and us. So I don't, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or anything, but are you familiar with like Jean-Michel Jarre, Tangerine Dream, Klaus Schulze?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Yeah. Very few people are. That's why I got all excited when you mentioned these records. You've met Jean-Michel Jarre?
I made music with him, actually, a lot.
Yeah. And who's the huge composer, the film composer? I can't remember his name.
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer is on it.
Yeah.
And so I did a panel with Jean-Michel Jarre and Hans Zimmer and Gary Newman and a few other people. And I was like, this is the weirdest gathering of electronic musician nerds. Yeah. So sorry for that tangent, but it's so interesting that you were sort of exposed to electronic music almost in the womb.
I'm a fan. I still am, I guess. I guess it's super important to be a fan. I really I couldn't do anything else. I mean, I studied law to please my parents, but I never had the arrogance to think that I'd ever be successful as a DJ. There's so many people out there who really do a good job at electronic music. And at the time, you had the DJ and you had the producer. The DJs were, Sasha and John Dickweed and Carl Cox. They were the cool dudes, and the nerds, hence me, were the guys with the white labels pressed against their belly, hoping that they could put that white label in the record box of those big DJs. And I guess a few years later,
I need to tell Lindsay what a white label is.
A white label is a first pressing. Usually, it was used to test if the record pressing went okay, kind of to promote the record without the official label on it yet or the nice sleeve. It was just a white label just to test if the audio was, if the vinyl cut was okay.
Usually with the information written on a pen. So like basically you get this record, it'd be a white sleeve, white label, and it would say, I don't know, Moby, go TP, meaning test pressing.
Yeah.
But then, because they were so obscure, a lot of record labels started only releasing white labels to sort of fool DJs into thinking that they had some exclusive test pressing. They'd make 10,000 of them, and they'd all look like exclusive test pressing.
And I think my career took off in a time where, for the first time, the nerds actually, they came from the wall, and they started taking over the decks. So I am the nerd because I started as a producer. I was a bedroom producer for a long, long time, way before I actually had the room to DJ. I always wanted to DJ at school parties, wherever I could start. And I started DJing in a room not bigger than this one. And there was maximum capacity was 50 people. But in hindsight, that's where I learned how to DJ. Because honestly, it's easier to DJ in front of 10,000 people. Because they're there to party and they know your name and they know your big hits, and that's what's going to happen. But I really have a lot of respect for all those DJs out there who have no name, and they have to, they're in a bar and there's 4 guys and 2 cute girls, and they have to make everybody dance and keep the attention. That's a lot harder than DJing in front of 10,000 people.
And also, I mean, like when I started DJing, I was playing 6 hours a night in a dive bar, and I was playing Monday nights. There were maybe 7 people there, and I got paid $20. And you had to play everything.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to hear Johnny Cash, you played Johnny Cash. If someone wanted to hear the Sex Pistols, you played the Sex Pistols.
Exactly. That's what I did. Yeah.
If someone wanted to hear hip hop, you played, basically, if you couldn't read the crowd and respond to them, you got fired.
Oh, that's the art of DJing. I always call it the art of the moment. A lot of people think DJing was looked down upon for a long time, especially about bands. And I understand, we're not playing the guitar live on stage, but I call it the art of the moment because you're playing that track at that moment for that crowd. You are, basically enhancing the mood of the crowd, which is what a band can do, because a band usually has a set list.
Yeah. So, and it's also, I think, and you could speak to this too, more about intuition.
Yeah.
It's just kind of having to be so in tune with the room that you know what to do next.
Learning how to read a crowd is a craft. Yeah. Otherwise you could just put iTunes or Spotify on shuffle, Yeah. But what makes you better than iTunes on shuffle? Think about it. Yeah.
So early 90s. When did you start making your own electronic music? And also, the nerd in me wants to know what equipment you were using.
My dad bought a Roland Jakes 3-piece synthesizer from his hard-earned money, and of course I stole it as soon as I could. And Through a family member, I got an Atari ST-20 520 with a cracked version of Cubase, and this is 1991. And with a paper route, I had an Akai S01 sampler, which was my basic equipment, and I had a disco mixer. And with the self-soldered cables, I had did everything hooked together, and I sampled everything, whether it was my mom on a phone or, I don't know, any records that I could get my hands on. And I just knew that thing inside out. And I started experimenting, never, ever with the idea of, okay, I'm going to make a career out of this. Never, ever. I never had the arrogance to think that would be successful. And in 1992, already one of my first demos got picked up for a compilation CD, and I just started fooling around. And I quickly found my way back to my dad's music, Trance, which was kind of the sound I was into at the time, even though the word trance hadn't been invented. It really didn't came into swing until like 97, 98. But I was already producing that kind of sound because I just loved it, and there were no rules. I just loved... I felt most happy when I was in my parents' bedroom upstairs, in my bedroom, and I had my equipment around. And it was a Friday night. I just had a great dinner. I went upstairs, and I was just nerding around. Like,
oh, it's the greatest thing.
I just had my underwear on. It was just, nerding away. And that feeling of freedom is still the feeling of freedom that I'm looking for when I'm producing today.
In a broader contextual sense, the one thing I will say, and Lindsay, you and I have discussed this before, is electronic music now is amazing, but you can make perfect electronic music with your phone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't,
while cooking. Yeah.
And it doesn't cost a penny. You can, with all this, the software is amazing. Anybody can do it, and it's great. But back then, it was, okay, I'm going to work for a year and a half to buy an Akai S900 sampler, and I'm going to work another 6 months to buy that 1 megabyte of memory, and I'm going to figure out how to use it, and I'm going to learn it inside out. And it was, and as a result, two wonderful things about that. One, as a result, there weren't too many people doing it because it was so challenging just finding the equipment, saving up the money to buy it, figuring out how to make it work, especially if you're like getting a DIN sync converter, converting things to MIDI that weren't MIDI. But the other amazing aspect of it, everybody had a different studio. As a result, every record sounded different. Like you'd hear a record.
It all only matters what equipment you have, and nobody has all of the exact same.
Every TR-909 sounded different.
Yeah, that's the drum
How?
machine. So the TR-909, there are two really legendary drum machines. There's the TR-808, which now is basically every hip hop song on the planet, even though the 808 was invented in the 70s. And the TR-909 was basically every house music song on the planet. Like if you heard it, you'd be like, oh, that's it. And it's these two drum machines made in Japan in the 70s. The TR-909 was interesting because it was that analog digital hybrid. So
It's amazing.
But you know why these machines were invented? They were invented because of disco. And DJs wanted to mix those records. And the problem with those records was they were not in time. Now you buy a record, and if it's 132 BPM, you know that it's 132 BPM straight. But if you have a real drummer, he does this with his foot. And if the chorus comes, he goes faster because he gets excited. So the tempo goes a little bit up. But that sucks if you want to mix.
as a DJ, it's so, I'm sure you've experienced this 100 times, like you're DJing, you've got your 20 people dancing in the dive bar, you set up your perfect mix, and when you go to mix, you realize the drummer has just started playing faster. It sounds like a bag full of cats and tin cans falling down a flight of stairs.
That must be incredibly. But so then you found, and forgive me because we did do a DJ lesson, but there's still things I don't know. You could then manipulate the drum beats. What are you saying? Help me understand.
No, so the TR-909 and 808 were initially it was not meant for those sounds to ever be recorded. They were just for the drummer to stay in sync.
Oh, okay.
But we started using those sounds, or the dance world started using those sounds for, and they're iconic. Like everybody knows the sound of an 808 or 909, even you, without note.
I promise you, every hip hop song made in the last 30 years is an 808, either 808 drum machine or an 808 drum sample. And same thing with if you've heard a house music song ever, it's the 909.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Why the difference?
The 808.
Why did they choose? Why not use the 808 for house music?
Because the 808, it's okay. I'll try and I don't want to, because I could go deep down a rabbit hole. But a lot of the 808 is a very the kick drum. It you know when you hear a hip hop song and it goes, the kick drum goes boom, boom.
Yes.
That's the 808, whereas the 909 goes oomph. Like it's more like a toof,
Like
toof,
a tighter
toof,
little.
toof. And so hip hop is slower, so it goes boom, boom, boom.
Yes.
And house music is boom, 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 boom. So that's
There you go.
you can change the sounds, but generally speaking, and did I just embarrass myself on camera quite a lot by imitating drum machines?
No, that was actually really helpful. I genuinely understand it from what you just did. So here's my question. So you're gathering all of this equipment. When you decided to make your demos, your first demos, what was that process like? Like, did you just learn from other people and you're like,
Yeah,
you know
you're
what?
just copying.
I love this sound and I'm just going to put it on a demo. And then once you have it, what do you do with the demo?
I still remember, I get goosebumps thinking about that time when I was just being so experimental. Just like, I love this sound, I'm going to make a track with it. I love this sample. I love it so much, I'm going to use it. Like my track Blue Fear is from 1996. I remember making it on a Friday night. And just as a B-side for a track called X Marks the Spot, which I already had finished, and the label asked, because a record at the time had two sides.
Yeah.
So you were never just releasing one track. It was always, they needed a B-side. So I made this track, which I initially named Blue Fear, named after, because I was bullied by some guys and I was afraid to go out. So I was afraid to go out Blue Fear. And I remember that track and it came out and I was super proud of it. It was the first time I actually used a proper bass drum in a track. And I just started being completely experimental with it because I thought, hey, it's a B-side, so who cares,
Yeah.
And that track ended up being the A-side. And Sasha and Dickweed, and didn't even know who that were at the time, who they were. And they used it on one of their compilations. Now, the compilation CDs was a CD with the best vinyl at the time, just compiled by a famous DJ. And they used to sell, I think, like some ridiculous amount of number, like 500,000 copies of that. And they would go across the counter for $23 per CD. Can you imagine? So if you were one track on a compilation that would sell that much, you'd get a lot of money. And I was not used to that kind of money. So I remember showing my dad the income from one track on one compilation on a statement that I got. And there was something like, I don't know, I made something like $15,000 with at the time. It's still a lot of money, but especially for me at the time, having no money at all, showing to my dad. And my dad was like,
Yeah.
what is that? I said, that's from that compilation.
He's like, you made this upstairs in your underpants? And
I did that. And that's basically what set the foundation for everything I did later, because with the $15,000, I properly invested them. And then my dad said, okay, we're going downstairs. There was one little room downstairs, which was used as the apothecary at my dad's office. And they used to sell right now you have I don't know, where do you go? CVS to buy medicine. At the time, my dad used to have one, but that I was out of the house, so that room was empty. And he let me have that room, and I built a sort of proper studio there. And that's where it really took off, because I bought proper speakers. I had a proper mixer. I was able
What
to...
mixer?
It was the Soundcraft Ghost.
I had the Soundcraft Spirit.
Okay.
So my album play was made on the Soundcraft Spirit.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome. At first I had a 24 channel, and then I was able to buy a 32 channel. Oh my God, I could mix 32 channels at the same time.
It's like a million channels.
Going back a couple of years, so early 90s, what records or producers inspired you? Let's go like 91 to 94.
In Holland, one of the reasons people always ask me why do so many DJs come out of the Netherlands, and I guess one of the answers to that is at the time we had quite a few very, very progressive radio shows. I mean, Holland is a very liberal country. Everybody knows our soft drugs policy, but
And the Queen rides a bike.
exactly. So
Wait, soft drugs policy?
Sorry?
Soft drug?
Yeah, for the longest time,
What does that mean?
cannabis was sort of cannabis and hash were basically legal in the Netherlands
We were known for that.
decades before.
That's the reason why I never smoked pot in my life, because for us it was not cool, because it was at every street corner.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's the big point? The only people that were smoking pot in our country were English people coming to the Netherlands for a weekend, and because in us it wasn't legal, but it was allowed. Sort of people weren't pursuing whatever. Also our dance music culture was already embraced at an early age. Like the public funded government radio stations had proper dance music radio shows already in 91, 92. And I had cassette tapes with all those things. Your Chong Go was on our radio during the day. Like it was that popular. And with that was the Prodigy, and now I know the names. At the time, there was no internet, there was no YouTube, there was no Discogs, there was no Shazam. You had to, if you wanted to know the title of a song, you had to go to a record store and play from your Walkman. Play it to the guy behind the counter, hoping that he would know what that was. And for a long time, I had no idea what this great music was that I was hearing on the radio. So, riding my bike to school, I had this big yellow Walkman. Mm-hmm. And I used to listen to those recordings from the radio. And that's how I basically got my dance music education. I was not old enough to go clubbing myself. I couldn't go out because I was refused everywhere. I was 16, 17. My parents used to hate dance music. That's why I loved it. I found my friends through it because that's in school. It was the cool thing. I have a cassette tape with Moby Go, listen to this. And I can make seamless transitions with it. And, a few of us had money to buy belt-driven turntables. We didn't have money for the Technics SL1200. No.
I need to explain that to Lindsay. Sorry.
Belt-driven.
So, turntable, vinyl turntables.
Yeah.
So, most turntables we all grew up with were belt-driven, which basically literally meant a belt spun the platter at 33 or 45 RPMs. And they're great, but they're not powerful. So, like, if you're DJing, you want to be able to start the record immediately. Like, boom, I'm queued it up to the beat. I let it go right on there, and it immediately, in less than a second, is playing at its regular speed. Belt-driven was kind of a weak platter turning technology.
Well, they were cheaper.
Much cheaper. But all of us have tried to DJ with belt-driven things, and it's like, it just doesn't work. And then the 1200, which do I have one here? I have one inside. Each one because they're so heavy, and they're so big, and they were so expensive, but they're so powerful. And immediately, when you let the record go, it would start right at the beat.
There were clubs where they had the same Technics SL1200 turntables for more than 30 years. And yes, they replaced the arm, they replaced the needle. Sometimes a little thing would break, but the engine was so robust, was so well built by Technics, that it would go on for 30 years, every single night for 5-6 hours, and it was still be that solid. That's how good the Technics SL1200 turntable were, the original ones. It's a legendary machine.
And again, going back to hip hop, house music, reggaeton, dance, every genre started with this turntable. So you can point to these one little bits of technology: the 808, the 909, the 1200, because I only had rack-mounted Akai samplers like the 900, 950, 1200, 3000, 3200.
Yeah.
But there was what's the one Todd Terry used at all the early hip hop records? The one that has the pads on it?
I never used that one. Is it the Ensonic?
No, it's a Akai.
Is it the Akai 1000? I don't know. Oh, yeah, the MPC 60.
MPC 60. Basically.
There is no machine tighter than that one. The original MPC was used by my big hero. My Obi-Wan Kenobi is Ben Liebrand. He was a Dutch master mixer. I don't know if you ever heard his name. We're still good friends. He now lives in Vancouver Island, but I would like to mention his name because what he did at the time was pretty revolutionary. I mean, I know it sounds silly now, but to combine two records at the time was revolutionary.
Yeah.
And he used to sample the weatherman, announcing the weather of the next day. And he used to sample that on the beat of Art of Noise and making him sound like the weatherman was actually rapping using a sampler.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's online. You can find it on YouTube somewhere. And I was 8 years old and I heard that, and that's when I knew this is what I want to do. I was so fascinated about, that's why I love albums like The Orb's Adventures Beyond the Ultra World. I'm a huge fan of ambient music, massive fan of ambient music, because, you know, with sound, you can paint. You can absolutely paint with samples, and that's what The Orb used to do, and what you do with your ambient albums. You can paint with sound, create a palette, a mood, an atmosphere, without it being... I found making songs sometimes so restricted, you know, verse, chorus, and there's nothing wrong with a good song, but all of a sudden in the world of electronic music, you had this immense possibility to create this universe that was just only living in your head, and to express that universe and to actually bring it alive in sound, you know. You can almost see it, you know what I mean? And I was, as a kid, I was fascinated about that. Like, if I play this pad with this sample, or it gives it you know, it gets meaning. And that's how I found my life's purpose. And I still try to find that guy, that boy that was listening to those early cassette tapes and those radio shows. Because these people were very, very experimental. Listening back at them, I recently digitized quite a few. They're on my phone as we speak. These cassettes still sound really good, with the Dutch presentations on them. And I'm still listening back to those tapes from 92, 93, and those ideas still sound so fresh to this day. I mean, what was happening at the time, I still think it was revolutionary, you know, and a lot of it is actually coming back, because a lot of those classics are now being rewritten. And what we were doing at the time, at the time when you released your first records, and later, of course, it was revolutionary. And I think now, only in hindsight, for example, the Beatles, everybody still talks about the Beatles, right? How amazing their repertoire was. I think the end of the 80s, the early 90s was the Beatles era for dance music, because what happened at the time was absolutely revolutionary.
And we've talked about this as well, like the technology was new, everything was...
The culture was new.
The culture people, was new. And we were also, what was amazing, we were inventing it ourselves. You know, you didn't have to get approval from big record labels or from corporations. It was like, oh, start your own record label, start your own clothing company, become your own club promoter. And the newness of it, the fact that it was being invented fresh and new every week, was that, I don't know if that's existed since.
And also, what I think was revolutionary is that when the DJs began to DJ in the era of disco, people were just dancing towards each other. So you had little circles of people dancing on the dance floor, dancing to disco. The DJ was kind of like just a little bit higher than the barman, but he wasn't the main attraction of the show. I think right now what you see is that all the people are turned towards the DJ. So that took a few years, but people started turning around and started seeing the DJ as the center thing, when the DJ for a long time was just, you know, the early DJs were just barmen who turned around, quickly switched CDs, and then, how can I help you, you know?
To be fair, my first job as a DJ, I would DJ on Monday nights. I was a bartender on Tuesday night.
Yeah, same.
I would DJ again Wednesday nights. On Thursday nights, I would be the doorman.
Wow.
And then I would also come in on my days off to practice DJing and clean the bar. And so I got paid more as a bartender than as a DJ. Like the nights I bartended, I did great. I made like $50. As opposed to DJing, I got a raise to $40. But still.
You probably all spend it at the record store, right?
100%,
the next day.
Or on equipment or everything, you know.
I think of this time because I don't know that there has been any sort of like artistic revolution that I have been a part of the culture, but I imagine that, I mean, not that I can think of, other than social media, which I don't know if that's any sort of great revolution, but it must have felt so empowering to feel like I'm at the forefront of something that nobody's done before, and to feel that like limitless feeling of I can make any sound I can think of.
Oh, I had imposter syndrome for a long time.
I think we all still do. Yeah.
Like, I mean, don't tell anybody, but guys, this really isn't that good, you know? That's what I thought for a long time. Like, really?
Like whenever whenever anybody told me they liked my music, my immediate response was, really? You sure? Or like if someone said, "Oh, I like your records," I was like, "Oh, that's polite of you to say. I know you don't mean it."
Exactly. I so know what you're talking about. I still, to this day, I'm like, really? The scariest thing is to put your music out there and share it with the rest of the world, because it feels like you're sharing your baby with the rest of the world. It's a piece of you, you know? It's so, but it's so different now than it was at the time.
Can I quickly, I know I've been doing this a lot, but I'm excited to do it. So early 90s house music from the Netherlands.
Yes.
What were, like, for example, like, did you like Plastic Dreams by JD?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. JD was actually one of the, Robin Albers is his name. I saw him a few weeks ago when I got an award for my radio show. And he was the director of the station at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's still around.
That
He's a legend.
record, that was a revolutionary record. I remember I'll play it for you sometime.
What is it?
It's basically a break beat and an organ. And that's the entire song for 9 minutes. And it's the coolest thing you've ever heard. I remember it was Chloe Sevigny's favorite song when she was an early raver in like 92, I guess. I remember being at a late night thing with her at like 6 o'clock in the morning in a basement on the Bowery, and that song came on. And
It's the music box preset from the Roland JX 8P if you want to be a real nerd. The dun, dun, dun. It's the lowest key. So, yeah.
And then the rest of it's just this break beat and then playing an organ on top of it.
What
So
brilliant.
simple and so revolutionary at the time.
Because there were no rules. I mean, right now, if you're making a beat, someone in the room will say, "Hey, this is tech house," or "Hey, this is techno." And if you look at Beatport, I love Beatport, but there's a new genre every week. Now, there's a lot of guys now who make trance music, but that they think that the word trance is not cool, so they call it melodic techno. And I don't even know the difference between melodic techno and trance. Anyway, but it's so funny.
Looked at Beatport? I'll show you. It's a portal where people buy dance music, and it's amazing, and it's so well done. But I look at it and I feel so ignorant because the genres. I'm like psytrance. What's the difference? That is.
Yeah.
Old school electro versus big room electro versus this. I'm like,
yeah, and there's a danger to it as well because I'm considered a trance DJ and I'm proud of it. I mean, I love trance and I'll proudly carry that flag if I have to. But I play a lot of tracks that are not labeled as trance or not on Beatport as actually the other week I had a number one in the raw techno chart and a number one in the main stage chart. Whatever that is, and not in a trance chart. So I felt a bit like, hey, this is weird. I got an award for being the highest trance DJ, but I have a number one in two. There's something weird going on.
Crossover.
yeah.
So I don't know. I just, my motto is don't be a prisoner of your own style, I guess. Just try to have fun with it. Don't think too much about what you're doing and let those people decide because they apparently know what kind of genre I'm making. I never know until I look up my own tracks on Beatport and I'm like, oh, okay, this is main stage. Okay, great.
So you can just kind of make whatever you feel like, whatever's coming up for you.
Well, your fans have certain expectations, yes.
Sure.
But Moby and I just released a record together, of course, which is actually today. So we actually have something to celebrate. It's a big day today.
Hooray!
Happy release day, we say.
Happy release day.
And but is it trance? Is it electro? Is it I don't know. It's just an amazing record in my opinion. But
okay, I'm going to ask one or two more early dance music related questions. I can't.
Well, no,
stop
it's
myself.
rare that you have someone here that knows all of this stuff.
And maybe I don't know if this is a bad question because maybe you guys like each other, don't like.
It just feels so weird. Like you have no idea. You're the legend of legends. Like if you would ask people like who founded this whole thing, you're definitely
one
of them.
More than anything else.
Yeah, but you're asking me questions about like I'm younger than you, obviously, and you asking me questions about the early days of dance music when you were sitting there. It's like it feels it feels a bit bizarre in a way, but
so one of the first trance tracks I remember hearing, and I fell in love with it. And maybe this is if you guys aren't friends, I apologize, but it's a Ferry Corsten track.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Ferry's a hero.
I think it's called "Where Are You Now."
Yeah,
is that do you know that track?
The Generator, is that?
I forget, but it has this vocoder. It's so melodic and so beautiful. And it's one of the first times I remember hearing dance music and being like, oh, this is almost orchestral. Like it was such a beautiful, emotional track. So I remember that was probably like 97, 98.
Yeah. Moon Man. I think is it a track by Moon Man?
the name.
Don't Be Afraid. Yeah,
I just remember a vocoder. The chorus is like, "Where are you now?" And it's this big emotional breakdown.
Yeah, Ferry's. Actually, I just did a vinyl back-to-back set with him on the radio show. Ferry is a great guy. He's absolutely a legend, and I always like to say that I warmed up for Ferry in the early days of my career, because in the UK at the time he was, God. He still is. But especially at the time, all his records were being played on BBC Radio 1, and it was sort of the Dutch invasion, He kind of carried that flag, and, we owe him a lot for the fact that he did that. And I'm really proud to say he's my friend, and definitely something I admire.
Well, please say hi.
Sorry?
Please say hi.
I will.
And also that really, I had been playing trance records before that, but that was the one that really made me recognize there's something very special happening here. Okay, one last old guy Dutch related. Just I'm
by all means, get it.
Sorry to keep going down that rabbit hole, but did you ever know Fierce Ruling Diva?
Yes, of course.
Okay, can I?
You got to believe in something. Why not believe in me? That's where Armin van Buuren stole his witch doctor loop.
Really? So can I tell you my first Dutch experience?
Sure.
Okay. And Lindsay, I've told you this story, so I apologize. I'm an old guy. I repeat myself. So the year was 1990, summer of 1990, and I'm going to Europe for the first time. And I went to Germany to play with Westbam and a few other people.
Oh, wow. The legend.
And I took the train to the Netherlands from Munster. Because I had been invited to play at a party being thrown by Eddie de Klerk. I think
the founder. In Holland, he's considered to be one of the founders.
Okay, so Eddie de Klerk, who I'd never met, had invited me to come play
at the Roxy.
No, it was a party called Voodoo that he threw in a warehouse. And so I had my keyboard in one hand, my bag of records in the other hand. I get to the Amsterdam train station. I've never been to Amsterdam. This is pre-internet. This is 1990. I'm like, all I had was an address for his office. And I went to his office and it was closed. And I was like, what do I do now? And I'm like, it's raining. It's Sunday. His office is closed. I don't have a phone number. I don't know what to do. So there's a phone booth across I think it was on Prinsengracht.
Prinsengracht, yeah.
And I walked into this phone booth, and to our drug question earlier, there was a passed out heroin addict in the drug booth.
It's not a soft drug. That's not within the policy.
And while this passed out drug addict was in the phone booth, I had a Fierce Ruling Diva 12-inch that had a phone number on the back of it. And so I took my Fierce Ruling Diva 12-inch and I dialed the number on the back, and Jeroen, who had started,
Flamman.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
He came and picked me up, and he and his boyfriend took me to a restaurant called the Bolhoed on Prinsengracht, great vegan restaurant. And then they took me to the Voodoo Festival.
My God, Moby's on the phone.
But at that point, I only had the song Go out, and people thought my name was Moby Go.
Really?
Yeah, so I had to introduce myself, be like, hi, you might not know me, my name's Moby Go. And I'm supposed to play with Eddie de Klerk tonight, but I don't know where I'm going. And he came, picked me up in his little red van and drove me to
Amazing. Well, at the time, everything in the Netherlands was still really, really, really new. The story of Eddie de Klerk goes back to the Roxy, where he used to have house music nights where nobody would show up. And then all of a sudden, people started coming because it was the new thing. I think it was 89, 90. Joost van Belle, Eddie de Klerk, Remy, Dimitri. That's how the whole dance music scene in the Netherlands basically was founded. And we still, pay respect to those guys because they really founded everything. I mean, I benefit from that today, the fact that happened at the time. But the Netherlands was really the Roxy and the It's later and the Escape Theater. That was it. I mean, people now think, if they think about dance music, they think about these massive festivals. They think about, Ultra Miami or EDC or Coachella, whatever, and there's 200,000 people coming. But at the time, dance music was, the biggest thing you would do would sell 400 tickets or 500 tickets in the Roxy, and then you would do really well. It was just a small, very, very niche thing. It's really important to underline that because it wasn't big at all. We just loved it because it was ours, It was our little world that we And it was not about money or anything, because there was no money to be made. Yeah, you could sell some records, and if you were lucky, you'd sell.
I think the drug dealers did okay.
They may.
Yeah, that would have been a hot spot.
I know you wanted to talk about mental health as a segue.
Well, yeah, I've noticed that you're quite open.
Yes.
About your journey there, and the self-awareness to say, I think I need to shift some things and put my focus in certain places. I think a lot of people don't get to the place where self-awareness drives them to actually change how they are.
It's how can I say this in a few sentences, because I don't want to repeat myself, because I've been telling this story recently a lot. But yeah, I went through a little bit of a bump in my life, and in my marriage, and in everything. And what was the most difficult thing about that is that I'm a control freak, and I thought I always controlled it. But I was unhappy for a long time touring and doing what I was doing, which was strange, because I'm still that guy that we've been talking about the last couple of minutes, and I'm really thankful. I'm really grateful for everything I do. I still am. I make my gratitude list every morning, and I thank my higher power every day, and I'm super grateful. But I was unhappy, and I'm also a little bit of a people pleaser, which is a bit of a problem if you're a DJ, because then you say yes to all the gigs that you get offered. And I was like, how the hell did I end up here? I wasn't seeing my family. I was just being in hotel rooms all the time. I was away from home, missing birthdays, missing family dinners, missing, everything. And here I was again in Vegas, selling out an amazing night, getting paid lots of money, but then waking up alone in my bed and just feeling lonely. And for a long time, that didn't end well. So I started drinking more and more and more. And at one point I had some really bad thoughts, like, okay, so my dad sort of intervened, and I went to see a psychotherapist, and I went in therapy, and I was like, I couldn't cope with myself, the fact that I was receiving all this fame, I had a company that was doing well, my records were selling well, I got plaque after plaque, and it was so great, and I was super happy and proud of what I was doing. But I felt like a robot a little bit as well. Felt more and more disconnected from my music, and I was just slowly spiraling downhill. And then, of course, we all know the passing of Tim Bergling, Avicii, which was kind of a turnaround for me as well. That really changed something in the dance music industry. It changed me. I was so shocked that happened, because we all loved him. His music is fantastic. And we just saw that happening. And that documentary is still one of the most shocking things I've ever seen. And it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, like, okay, I may actually have a serious problem here. I need to stop. So I told my management I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to take a sabbatical, and that's when COVID happened. So that's
timing.
If you don't believe in a higher power, I now have to, because he just intervened there. He came and he said, okay, it's time to quit. And then I started working on myself. I quit drinking, so I'm now, as they say, 5 years clean and sober. And I never really took drugs, fortunately, because I was never into that. So I never used any substance. I never even smoked pot. So I quit drinking, went to work on myself, and completely changed it around. And I found out that the balance was just wrong with me. Fortunately, I was able to make things up with my wife and with my family. And for a long time, actually considered, during COVID, seriously considered quitting music quit the radio show, for a long time, I didn't even do the radio show myself. And I had somebody taking over. And then I found myself again, just by accepting those feelings, and started meditating, getting serious help, getting a sponsor, and I honestly, I can say right now, looking back at it, and this may sound really, really ironic, but the cave you fear holds the treasure you seek. Mm-hmm. And that's literally my new favorite quote, because I started looking at myself and realizing that I had a problem. So in a way, it was a gift,
Yeah.
Before I spiraled out of control and actually jumped off the roof of the hotel in Vegas, which crossed my mind, 'cause I wasn't happy. Like, who's going to miss me,
Yeah.
And this was a terrible thought. And but I'm so happy that happened to me, because it opened my eyes, seeing that I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with myself. I was just angry with myself in a really weird way. It was me. It was me who was fucking it up. Nobody else. I'm not blaming anybody, not blaming my management, not blaming my label, not blaming my fans. It was just me. And I had to seriously look at myself and the monster I became, and how arrogant I became, how not nice to people around me. And changing my daily routine, much more happened than quitting drinking. It was just my eating habits changed. Meditating in the morning, which it took a lot of time to embrace meditation. I used to hate it.
What kind?
Just sitting with an app for 10 minutes, and my mind would race, and I was like, this is not for me, and I threw the headphones away. And then later I understood that was exactly the point of meditating.
Yes.
It is. The point of meditating is that your thoughts are running like crazy, and that the monkey is yapping.
Yes.
So, one of the stupid things I changed, for example, is when I'm home and I wake up next to my wife, first thing I would do is grab my phone, which is what a lot of people do. And again, there's nothing where I'm not criticizing, but it's so weird. Like, the person I love the most is laying next to me in bed. And what do? I turn the other way and grab my phone. And I started reading the news and the messages.
Yeah.
Well, what is most important? It is that person.
Yeah.
So one of the routines I changed is I'm not touching my phone until after my workout.
Yeah.
And that kind of really changed everything, and made me into it made me a lot more happy with myself, and realizing that I have no control over anything, realizing that it's all in my higher power's hands, and that I should just let it happen. I have no control over nothing. The only thing I can control is my own behavior and my own thoughts. And that is a full-time job, controlling my own thoughts.
It's funny hearing you talk about it. I hadn't really thought of it this way, but like, similar to you, like when we're growing up, none of us expect any success.
No.
Like for me, success would have been making one 12-inch that sold 500 copies. Exactly. I'd be like, that's it. I can retire. I'm done. But then you find yourself on the receiving end of everything. Like suddenly it's like, there's money, there's attention, there's parties, there's fame, there's all these things. And at first it's phenomenal. But then the depression creeps in, the anxiety creeps in. But one of the issues that I had, and it sounds like maybe you had as well, is I almost was telling myself, oh, I'm not allowed to be anxious. I'm not allowed to be depressed. Everything's great. Exactly. And if I'm depressed, something must be so wrong with me that I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to ignore it because I'm a rock star. I don't have the right to be depressed. And it's like, but the brain doesn't, the brain doesn't care. The brain just knows that it's sad and confused.
But also the longer you're pushing it down, the longer you're ignoring it. It's getting worse underneath.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, I'm depressed, so I'll drink more. Okay, I'm depressed, I'll stay out later.
You start looking for external solutions for internal problems, and you don't realize it. You don't realize that you drink not because you like the taste of alcohol, or you're having an amazing salad. And you want to have a glass of wine with it, and the combination is great. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of people who can do that. I was not drinking for that. I was drinking to get rid of my anxiety right before a show. I could never go on stage without 2 glasses of champagne. I had to drink at least 2 glasses of champagne to take the edge off. And I told myself it's allowed because nobody has that amount of pressure. And I want to perform. And I'm more relaxed if I have 2 or 3 glasses of champagne, and I'll perform. And I used to finish the bottle at the end of the show, and that would be normal. And my crew would drink as well. I mean, nobody said anything.
Yeah. Good thing you never discovered cocaine.
Yeah, exactly.
I discovered cocaine towards the end of my drinking, and boy, it got me sober very fast.
Yeah.
Like, just pushes you to
That's when things go dark and strange. Like alcohol, if I had just kept drinking, I probably would have gotten sober eventually, but it wouldn't have happened that quickly. The cocaine really it pushes you to your bottom really.
I have a lot of guys I'm helping now. Actually, I set up, during the COVID, I set up these groups, chat groups on WhatsApp. And one of these groups grew so fast. It was 120 DJs in there. And it's like a closed group. And actually next week, we have a retreat in the Netherlands that I organize where 11 DJs come together to do yoga, to eat vegan, to go out for long walks, just to be together, to do, exercises.
Amazing.
And a lot of those people aren't in recovery. They're just people who are struggling. And everybody, I find pretty much every DJ I know runs into a wall sooner or later, whether it's addiction, depression, anxiety. It's just, and this is what it's now more accepted to talk about this, because since the passing of Avicii, people know that this lifestyle as great as it is, we need to stress that, because it is very great. And the private jets, yes, they're true. And the big checks, yes, they're true. But there's a big downside to it. And that is your brain. And that is your self-critique. And we have to be very, very wary of that, because I'm just super afraid. And this is the reason why I started these groups, that other DJs are going to hurt themselves, because after Avicii, we had multiple other DJs hurting themselves for the wrong reasons. And they're human beings first and foremost. We need to look after each other. I feel a responsibility to the DJ community as a whole. There's not really a solid foundation, even after the passing of Avicii, which had such a massive impact on the world of dance music. There's not really a platform to help these people. Like, where do you go as a DJ if you're having these dark thoughts? Where do you go? So that's why we set up these groups. And if any DJ struggling is out there and needs my help, hit me up.
It's interesting hearing you talk about it. It's another thing I hadn't recognized, is that we are solitary people. We can have friends, we can have family, but like one person on stage, one person alone in the dressing room, one person alone in the studio working. There's a lot of that isolation. And as a result, when things start to go wrong, we don't know what to do. We're because growing up, you rely on yourself to make music. You rely on yourself to look for records. You rely on yourself for everything. And then when things start to go wrong with mental health, you're like, oh, I have to rely on myself. And it's that moment what my favorite acronym for God is the gift of desperation. That moment of I can no longer rely on myself for this. I need to tell other people what's going on.
Well, there's still, when you touch on the subject of mental health, the first thing that happened to me is I get sweaty hands. I still do. If I'm truly honest, and I'm going to be truly honest.
To talk about it or to look at it.
Yes, because it's shame. And I had a therapist who could explain the danger of shame. Because we all know the fairy tale of the princess and the mattresses with
the princess and the pea.
Princess and the pea. And no matter how many mattresses you put there, the shame will always be there. And he explained to me what is so dangerous. There's two things. There's guilt and there's shame.
Yeah.
What is the big difference is guilt is I made a mistake. I'm going to apologize for it. I'm going to leave it in the past. Shame is I'm not good enough. And we built these mattresses. So one of those mattresses, which I have, for example, is people pleasing. I want you guys to like me. So I'm joining this conversation and I'm saying the right thing. So you think I'm a cool dude. Another layer could be alcohol, could be drugs. You just don't want to feel the shame. But no matter how many mattresses you put on yourself, there's always going to be another layer. Being a workaholic is one of those mattresses. You're going to put another layer on top of you. Becoming aggressive, becoming arrogant, becoming an ego. It's another mattress, not to feel the shame. And what I had to learn myself is I had to turn the shame into guilt. Saying okay, I made a mistake, or I wasn't so nice, I have to apologize to this person, or I didn't do this so well, and I have to leave it behind me. And that's how you can get rid of the shame and no longer feel you're not worthy. And because this is the foundation of everything, of all this insecurity, it's the feeling that I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I don't belong here. The imposter syndrome that we touched on earlier, it's so true, And I'm just talking from personal experience. I mean, I know this is different for everybody, but this is what I found out about me. Who is Armin van Buuren really? Who am I really? And I saw a really ugly human being in a way, but I had to embrace him. I had to give him a lot of love, and I had to learn that. I'm still learning that, by the way. I mean, I don't want this podcast to sound like my journey isn't over. I'm in the middle of my journey, and I have to do it one day at a time. So I still do that. I still make my gratitude list every day. And I thought it was the stupidest thing to do that. Why do people make gratitude lists? You know, and I had so much resistance again. And now I do it every day for I've been doing it for 4 years, every morning, just listing 5 things that I'm grateful for. Sometimes it's the hardest thing that I do. And I know if I have to think about 5 things that I'm grateful for, and if it takes me more than a minute, I know I'm not doing well. Because then I'm not appreciative of my family, of everything I got, the success I had. I mean, we all know a gratitude list can be anything. It can be a cup of coffee in the morning. It can be the sunshine. It can be the nice bed you're laying in. You know, but sometimes I find my brain really fighting for 5 things to look for that I have to be thankful for. And that tells me that maybe I need to do some work on myself that day.
So our friend Julie taught me a sort of expanded gratitude practice that I really love. Have we talked about the?
Yeah, yes.
So it's basically, because I was making my gratitude list and I wasn't getting that much from it. And her suggestion, and it worked, if you want to try it, or if anyone listening wants to try it, is you don't just write down what you're grateful for. For each thing, you also write down 3 reasons why. And something about that simple expanded practice, she told me about it and I tried it. It really, it just deepens the process.
Because you can't just write a cup of coffee and then be like, okay, on to the next.
Yeah.
Well,
you have to really get into it.
So one of those stupid things about a cup of coffee is that thanks to my gratitude list, I now actually taste my coffee.
Yeah.
I used to every morning just get my cup of coffee and pour it in, and I wouldn't even taste it. I wouldn't even notice that I was drinking the coffee. Now I sit down, I take a breather, I take a sip of coffee. I'm like, wow,
it's the
it's
greatest
warm.
thing in the world. Yeah.
What a great taste. I'm not even tasting my coffee. How silly is that? And that's one of the things I had to learn through therapy. Yeah.
To be more present.
Be in the moment. Yeah. We only have this moment, as we know. And the power of the moment, that had to, it took me a lot of years of therapy to really let that sink in.
And how has this changed your thoughts about creativity and music?
I'm less angry with myself. I just let the process be. Normally if I would drive down to do this podcast with you, I would sit here and I would on the way, I'd check all your previous podcasts and I would well, what is he expecting? What kind of questions? And I want him to, when I leave, I want him to think oh, Armin van Buuren is such a nice guy and he's being so genuine. And, I just let it, I just give it to my higher power. And, the fact that you just sent me that thing about the gratitude list to have 3 things why, that is, to me, another proof that my higher power is working, because you're giving me another step in my recovery. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense, because it's...
Oh, yeah.
It's if you start seeing your higher power at work, if you start seeing that this is actually how life works, that, I have nothing to say over it and just let go. So when I'm in the studio, sometimes I sit behind a keyboard and I come across chords, or I find a sample, or I'm inspired by something. It would almost be like an insult to my higher power not to pursue that melody, because he's giving that to me. You know what I mean? That's how I now make music. So even if I make a track that's 150 BPM, that's super hard, and I'm there's a reason why my higher power is letting me make this music. So I'd better embrace it. So that's a new philosophy for me. And since then, I didn't have any writer's blocks. I'm sure you know the feeling when you're in the studio and you have no inspiration at all. And I want to say to all my fans who are always ask, every interview I get the question, where do you get your inspiration from? Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it's my subconscious, just combining all those melodies that I heard for 30, 40 years. And on a subconscious level, that's making me move my fingers. I started taking piano lessons 5 years ago. So now all of a sudden I know what the hell I've been doing all those years. And I love learning. I also noticed how I missed that in my career when I was doing 130 gigs a year. All I was doing is I was living from show to show and release to release and radio show to radio show. I wasn't doing anything else. And now I have time to do stuff. And I noticed that one of the things I really like in life is that I should, after school, after university, I should have never stopped learning. So I took on, I got my boating license. I learned how to, I learned how to use a barbecue, and not for meat, but for vegetables, and to make cakes and stuff. And there's so much to learn in the world and so much to see, but you have to be eager to see that as well. So taking on piano lessons, I mean, it was really uncomfortable. My piano teacher coming in, I found this guy, an amazing guy, and he walked in and he was a bit shy, like, "You're Armin van Buuren, yeah. You've had all these black, yeah. And I'm gonna give you piano lesson number 1, yeah." So we sat down, we opened, the first piano book and started playing the piano like a beginner, and that was such a breath of fresh air. I'm like, wow, I'm learning. So I think one of the truths in life for me is just never stop learning. Read books, self-educate. I love YouTube. There's so much to find on YouTube.
You can learn anything.
You can learn anything from cooking. It's like doors that you open. Like the other day I went diving, to get a PADI diving degree. So once you dive into the world of diving and you open that door, you start seeing that there's thousands of people who know everything about the fish and the life underwater and how and then there's all kinds of enthusiasts, and this is a whole world, amazing. So
that segues perfectly into one thing I know you wanted to talk about is oceans.
Yes, because you've been doing a lot with the oceans and working with organizations to protect them.
Yes, and one of the things I'm really concerned about is plastic pollution.
Oh my God, it's my biggest fear.
It's the thing I can't even think about. It's too terrifying. Because not just microplastics, it's nanoplastics.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's so dark and terrifying.
I went to Bali, and I came to I love Bali. I love coming there. I love Indonesia, but I was shocked that they don't have a general waste management.
I've seen a lot of people talking about the waste management problem in Bali.
They don't have people in Bali are used just by I think years and years of, they just throw the garbage in the water, and the water takes the garbage to the sea, and where does the garbage go? So yeah, it's a problem. And I have 2 kids, and it changed my view on life a lot. Like, what kind of world do we live in? And of course, again, I can't change a lot of the stuff that's going on the planet, and a lot of it I don't agree with. But if I, as an artist, have anything to say, I'm still I feel humbled the fact that the WWF, at VNF in the Netherlands, as we would say, they had hired me as an ambassador. I think I'm gladly accepting that. There's a few other things I also do. I'm an ambassador for the Children's Hospital against cancer, because my manager's son was really sick with cancer, and it shocked me so much. And having 2 kids myself, I was like,
yeah.
I mean, cancer is a horrible disease for anybody at any age, obviously, but especially for kids. I mean, I was like, no. So they wanted to open this music studio. Once a year, I go there, and I teach these sick kids how to DJ. And for them, it's a relief. But I always come home. I have to take a day off because I get really emotional.
Oh yeah,
of seeing all those kids. Yeah, but I have to do it.
Like doctors and nurses who work in pediatric oncology wards. I'm like, I couldn't even do it for 1 minute. It's just too upsetting.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that people do it. It's so necessary.
But it's painful for me. It's painful to walk there and to see those kids. But I have to do it because I feel like it's my way of giving back for everything that I receive. And same thing with the plastic pollution. And I'm trying to be now more active as a member to actually raise money for all those things that they're doing. And they're helping, for example, in Bali now, they're building a thing that they can recycle plastic and stuff. But just walking around there, as much as I love Bali, I'm so shocked. Well, we did a photo shoot next to those rivers full of plastic, and I was like, this can't be good for the planet. I mean,
and it's especially strange because it's this place where people go for these spiritual journeys and to connect with themselves and the planet.
Yeah, but these people don't know any better. I think it has a lot to do with education. People in Bali do not know that is bad for the world because their grandparents used to do it. So we can't really blame them. But it's also, we need to educate them first and foremost. Yeah. You can't just walk in there and be angry. Like, why are you not throwing your garbage in the bin? And because they're not used to that. They don't know that.
And the thing with plastic, it's horrifying, but one very interesting aspect of it is everybody's guilty. You know, there's no socioeconomic divide around plastic use. Like, poor people use plastic, rich people use plastic, middle income people use plastic. It's not like for example, climate activists, someone could say like, oh, well, rich people in the first world have more climate emissions. Like, yeah, that's right. But plastic is egalitarian.
Yeah.
You know, someone who's barely struggling to get by in the third world is still using a ton of plastic. So it's...
And even the people that are the most environmentally conscious people, even if you're buying a thing of strawberries that costs $23, which is an option, it comes in a plastic... a plastic container.
Fortunately, you see small things are changing. You know, if you go to I was just at a store here, and they don't give plastic bags anymore. They just give paper
California.
bags. Yeah, so that's...
I think, or is it Los Angeles County where you can't give plastic bags anymore?
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's the start. So let's try to be positive and let's see that as a good sign.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beginning. It's a start. People are getting more and more aware, but I do feel guilty for flying so much, you know. Traveling, I know that is really polluting the planet, and it's something that really bothers me. And you know, if I take the train to the airport, which doesn't make sense, but I live next to the train station. And then I hop on an aircraft that is polluting the planet, and sometimes it really bothers me, to be honest.
But then I have to remind myself, okay, like I'm one of 10 billion people, and I'm going to try and do my best to make things better. But for example, if I buy a new pair of socks and they come in a plastic wrapper, my immediate response is to be mad at myself and be like, oh, I'm so bad for doing this. Why couldn't I make my own socks and grow my own cotton or something? As opposed to being like, okay, there are 10 billion people. Like, we're individuals. We can do our best, but there's still so much we're never going to be able to do. Like,
And there's science that's working on it now. And there's this company that I use called Ridwell that helps you recycle hard to recycle things like plastic bags, which plastic film cannot be recycled normally. Cool. But there are companies that will come pick up these like multi-layer plastics, plastic films, keys, bottle caps, and find ways to recycle them. And they're popping up in more and more cities. So hopefully people
You guys are more advanced than we in the Netherlands.
I seriously doubt that.
I doubt that, yeah.
Well, we every week one week we have the remainder of garbage, then the next week we have recycled garbage. So everything from the kitchen goes into a different bin, and then we have a paper. The other week they come for paper. So
that's nice. That's better.
It's good. Yeah, it's better. It's a start.
And
it's something.
So, what else do you want? Because I have a few more. I still, of course, my inclination is to go back and talk about like old nerdy.
Oh, I know you're really finding that right now.
So, Lindsay, what do you want to?
I guess I would love to talk about, and maybe this is too soon, but what are you doing next? What are your big plans for yourself as an artist?
Oh, and also sort of maybe adjacent to that, because touring and burning yourself out led to a sort of like physical, spiritual bottoming out. How do you keep doing, because you're traveling constantly, you're from the outside, your life looks the same. So in addition to like a gratitude list and whatever, what other practices keep you healthy and sane while you're being so busy and traveling around the world?
Gym, working out, eating healthy, and finding balance in the diary is super important. Like I'm really strict on myself with the number of gigs anymore. I mean, for me, it's the hardest thing ever to say no to shows, especially the big ones. Like, for example, I used to have my own night in Ibiza for 16 years, played pretty much every club there, and I love the island, but I had to say no to residency. So I'm only playing September at Ushuaia, which is my favorite club, and it's an amazing event, and I love playing there, but you know, I want to give my kids a proper school holiday with a father who's actually there, you know, who's not only physically present, but also spiritually present. And I think my kids deserve that. You know, they deserve to have, I mean, I said yes to kids, so I need them, you know, take my responsibility. And that's what I want as well. So it's not so much only for them, but it's also for me, you know what I mean? So this summer I had an amazing month of July where I toured, did all the big festivals, and then came home. And then for 3.5 weeks, I was in Greece doing absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm really good at doing nothing. Just reading books.
Not everyone is good at that.
I'm not good.
Just doing nothing, reading books, talking with my wife a lot, watching a good movie, spending time doing games. We love doing games as a family. I think that's the best way to connect, card games and all that sort of stuff. Playing chess with my son, being in the pool, just normal family stuff. And I never thought I'd say this, but it actually makes me happy. Mm-hmm. It's a bit cliche, but it really makes me happy. So last year it was so funny. I took a whole month of July off, and the first gig was at Tomorrowland, second weekend. And I arrived at Tomorrowland, and I had a tan, and I felt great. So, and I walked into the backstage, seeing all these other DJs who were like in full-on tour mode with bottles of vodka, and hey man, where did you play last night? And I was like, I just came from a sunbed and just read books. And everybody's like, wow, you look healthy for a DJ that's touring. And it's like all those DJs are on the never-ending tour, and they just keep going. And I look at them now with different eyes. I'm like, oh God, I've been there. Good luck. Where do you play tomorrow night? Mykonos. The night after, Berlin. Oh, good luck.
Yeah, and then the night after that, Las Vegas, and the night after that, Auckland.
I mean, it sounds so exhausting.
Yeah.
But
so
just on the hamster wheel.
You do get used to it, but it does catch up with you, especially, like time passes.
Well, yeah.
And you miss out on so many things. You miss out on a lot of beautiful stuff. And now I want to embrace that. So I met my friends again. We're doing escape rooms. Have you heard of escape rooms?
Oh, I love a good escape room.
Escape room is so much fun.
Yeah.
And
have you ever done one?
I have not, but I'm the only person I know who hasn't done one. I'm
going to make you go do one. They're really fun.
Yeah.
It's like watching a good movie. You're like so busy trying to escape that room and doing all the puzzles and stuff that you don't have anything else to do. So stuff like that. I think there's a lot more beauty in life than electronic music. Don't worry, I will never quit making electronic music, because I will always do that. But I find myself being more inspired, being less in the studio and doing other things in life. Like reading, just going to a friend, It's going to museums is one of my new passions. I love museums. I mean, thank God that they're there. I just love that. Spending time with the kids, doing homework with my daughter now, because she's now in middle school, and it's like seeing all the math that I didn't understand now. I have to explain to her. So what about the future? Because you were asking. Piano lessons. I am actually making a lot of piano pieces at the moment. So,
have you discovered other genres of music through piano, like classical or?
I recently went to a Hans Zimmer concert. Mm-hmm. I'm really inspired by that, and I guess you can also hear it in my music a little bit, because I've just the piano lessons have had a big impact on me creatively. Just because. You really, I always started with an 8-bar loop in a sequencer, putting some drums and then a sample and then a bass line and then, arranging from that. That's how I used to work. Now I sit behind a piano and I think of a melody, and I have a recorder and I record that melody, or I sing a melody in my phone. I have a lot of me singing on my phone. And then I just go into the studio and make that into a piece. Have
you discovered, some of my obvious favorites, like the French Impressionists, like Debussy, Satie.
Yeah.
Just in terms of and then early, even George Gershwin, because George Gershwin was a huge Debussy fan.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of, one of the things as a musician that I found really inspiring on piano is changing up the chord voicings.
What does that mean?
I wish we had a keyboard here. It's basically like if you're playing an A minor chord, traditionally would be A, C, E. Mm-hmm. But then you could also start at the C with an E and then have the A up here. And then if you add in, let's say, the whole step, if you had a G in the step of a B, so you get these clusters.
Is that interpolation?
I don't know what that word means, so I'm going to say
someone said it once. It sounds like maybe it could be that.
That's true. But it's true.
That, and the French Impressionists, like Debussy and Satie, were really sort of at the forefront, because that's sort of rebuilding chords with clusters and different voicings for the longest time was sort of frowned upon. It was a little too strange, but it can be really emotional at the same time?
Well, one of the things I discovered, for example, we were playing this, I think Gymnopédie by Eric Satie. Everybody can play that on the piano, right? So I started playing some more pieces of Satie because I really I just wanted to learn why. I mean, all these people can't be stupid for loving that piece. So I just want to know, at first I was like, okay, so I was learning the chords, but then my teacher was sitting next to me. It was like, and I was going a completely different way. So I'd start with the three chords that were on the score. And then I would just change the melody. I was like, yeah, because he goes this direction, but my gut tells me I want to go here. And he's like, oh. So at first he was really like, no, we can't do that.
That's not the rules.
That's not the rules. But then he started to understand that what I was doing was actually composing. So I get inspiration from the 2 or 3 starting chords, but then I go to a different direction because I think it's much more interesting for me. So that is sort of embracing that artist in me, which for him it was really difficult at first, but then we started to compose these pieces together because he understood that I'm too much of an artist so I used Satie as an inspiration or Chopin for that matter, and started playing the first 2 chords, and then I just go my own way. You know what I mean? And I use that as an inspiration for my own music making, and that's so bizarre. It's like you have these paintings. I like the analogy with paintings. You have these paintings you can buy where you have like a forest, but it's only you see white and you see black lines and then the numbers where you have to put the color.
Paint by numbers, yeah.
Yeah, paint by numbers. So I could never do that because I'll start making trees bigger. You know what I mean? Because I just think it's more interesting that way. This is how I am as an artist. So embracing that, I would not paint the exact numbers, but I would. Oh, green. Why do you say that number has to be green? I want it to be brown because I think it's autumn and it's more interesting that way to look at. So that's how I am as a musician. Like, I just want to make music.
Why make your thing when I could do it like my thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So, unfortunately, my piano teacher let me. I had another piano teacher who was more strict. Like, no, you can't. You have to play it like this, and it says here forte, mezzo forte. So you have to be. I'm like, who? Why?
This isn't the military.
Exactly.
Yeah, Lindsay, I think we were talking about this at one point. I was working with a classical musician, and I sat in front of the piano, and I was like, hey, let's just play something. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, just play. And I put my hands on the keyboards, and I was just messing around.
They can't do that.
And she sat down, and she started crying because she had never once played a note on piano that didn't come from score that was put in front of her. She couldn't improvise, and it broke her heart because she'd been told by her teachers for years and years, you have to play what's written in front of you perfectly. That's the only thing.
But I think there's also beauty to it. I mean, why are you Moby? Why are you so successful? That's because you are a unique being, just like I am a unique being and you are a unique being. I think God has put us on this planet because we're all unique beings and we're supposed to think differently. That's why we find Einstein.
Yeah.
Because he thought differently and he's given us this beautiful knowledge and all these beautiful formulas. I think there's a lot of truth that we have to start to embrace each other's fact that we're all different. We are all different, and it's supposed to be like that. Yeah. We are supposed to disagree on some things. If we would all like the same music, if we would all like the same paintings, it would be boring as hell and we would get nowhere because there would be no evolution. But the fact that we're all different, I think, is something we need to embrace.
Right, Bagel?
Yeah. She's like, that got her up.
Yeah.
She's been so sweet and quiet.
I know. She's very quiet.
I know. So you have to go because you're DJing some big festival in Orange County.
Yeah. No, at Long Beach. Yeah.
Long Beach, even further away. I don't know. It's probably even closer, but further away on a Friday night. Yeesh, I'm sorry.
That's great. I'm looking forward to it, actually.
I love Long Beach. Underrated, in my opinion.
No, but it's called Dream State, and it's about trance. So it's kind of like going back to my roots.
That sounds fun.
I can be a little bit more me, which is great. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I love trance music. We should listen to like top 20 greatest trance hits, half of which would be your music.
Yeah, no, I definitely.
But it's really like it was. I remember in the late 90s first being exposed to it, and a friend of mine was a big trance DJ in Connecticut, and because there they're epic. You know, those like 5, 6, 7, 8 minute songs that built, and with the like 3 minute breakdowns. It's like
people cry.
Yeah, it was very. I mean, there's a reason why you were DJ Magazine's #1 DJ in the world 5 years in a row. I mean, that's pretty spectacular, and it's because it was not just your talent, but just the emotion that you know. Because there's a lot of house music and electronic music that's exciting, but not emotional. You know, it's the bringing that beauty and the melodies and the chords to dance music. It's such a powerful combination.
Thank you. It means a lot, especially coming from you. It's a big honor. You know, I still. It feels weird, but in a way, I'm still that young guy with the yellow Walkman listening to those early dance records, because that's who's sitting here. You know, I know him now. I'm 47 and with all these achievements, and don't get me wrong, I'm super proud of them. I'm not going to downplay them, but you'll always be that. I'll always be that guy driving my bike to school through the rain with the big yellow Walkman, listening to your first productions, and I don't know, the Shaman and the Prodigy and Front 2 for 2, and you know, I ate it all up.
That's when the spark happens, the fire is lit, and that is, I think, what keeps you going.
Yeah, and one of the things that sustains us is that sort of that childlike joy and enthusiasm, and we're fans.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, just like we started as fans, and what keeps us going is we're still fans of like just that excitement of what music can do. You know. Well,
if you really want to look at it from a scientific point of view, music is trembling air.
Yeah.
It's nothing but, you know, there's a speaker.
Molecules, yeah.
And that speaker moves the air, and we're on planet Earth, so we're lucky that there's air around us, so it can transport the sound to your eardrum. And then something interesting happens, because you hear it, your eardrum starts to move, and it's information that your brain starts to interpret, and you start giving meaning to that trembling of your eardrum. But what is that? You know, we can't, and you know, I know we have AI now, and I don't want to go into that whole discussion because I know that's like a whole different subject, but what is a hit and what is not, what is a good record or what isn't a good record is something that computers to this day, in 2024, maybe in a few years will be different, but they can't predict it. It's a feeling, and that's the beauty of it. You know, I've spent hours and hours and so many dollars on songs that didn't do anything at all. I always like to say to people like, oh, you're so successful. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've had a few hit records, but I would say that 80% of the music I released did absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But you'll be reminded for the 20% that did.
Yeah.
That is part of being, I think, a writer, a musician, an artist, anything is accepting, like, you have to love what you're doing, because best case scenario, 1% of what you release might find an audience.
Exactly.
You know, if you don't love the other 99%, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Well, look at the Beatles. You know, I'm always fascinated about them. I mean, they were together for like 8 years or something, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, like I think the first one probably came out in 62 and they broke up in 70. So yeah, like eight or nine.
That's so insane to me. I never really processed how short of a time they actually worked together.
They made a lot of music. So they made about 300 songs or 200. I don't know. I don't want to get into fights with Beatle enthusiasts. But
Jonathan, who's editing this, is the world's biggest Beatle enthusiast.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see his response, because he's such a sweet, adorable nerd. He'll probably be like, actually, well, they made 427 recorded pieces of music, but they also had, like, sorry, Jonathan, I know that's exactly the thought that's going through your head right
now.
No,
but the point I want to make is that they made, let's say, 300 songs. I may be wrong, but let's say they make 300 songs. 100 songs of them are classics. You know, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, A Day in the Life, Hey, I don't know. There's so many. I mean, the list goes on and on. Then there's another 100 songs that are amazing, really good. Not hits, but they were great album tracks and amazing. And then there's 100 tracks that are interesting. You know what I mean? So number 9, for example, is one of those. It's very experimental. Hats off to them for actually trying stuff like that. But they also dared to venture out a little bit, which is why they were so brilliant. But I think that specific track has always been a bit like, what is that? You know, it was a sonic experiment, super interesting. And it proves my point that if even the Beatles didn't make, 300 hit records, but they made a few hits and then a few not so successful tracks.
Yeah.
which is fine.
No career is sustained by the hits. It's sustained by the love for the misses.
Yeah.
Like when you're like, you know what? I released this music. No one else liked it. No one cared, but I loved making it and I really love it. That's what keeps you going year after year after year.
Exactly. And that should be a tip to anybody making music. Don't give up, because I think your latest release is only another step in your big hit, which will come as if you keep going, never quit. Because, the first 10 years I made music, it didn't do well at all. I was happy if I sold 500 copies. That for me was a success. The success didn't come until like 15 years later. Ed Sheeran said it beautiful. You have to first make 100 really terrible records. Like you have to get them out of your system, and then you start making decent ones.
Yeah.
There's a truth to that, I think.
Okay, well, we're going to let you go to glamorous LBC.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful show tonight. And honestly, thank you so much for coming over. This was a really... And as Lindsay was saying, your vulnerability and your honesty.
Thank you so much.
It's really, it's been wonderful spending this time with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You make me blush, guys.
That's our goal here at Moby Pod.
Okay, so first off, Linz.
Moby.
I have to apologize for something.
Why? What?
There were so many interesting things that we talked about with Armin, but I also went down so many middle-aged guy electronic music rabbit holes.
I know that you needed to get that out of your system, and I'm really, really happy for you that you got to, because those are... Bagel.
Bagel.
She's really needing attention today.
So good.
Because those aren't conversations that we can have, because I don't know these things.
Yeah.
I don't know the equipment. I don't know the names. Maybe one day I will, but not today. So I'm really, really glad that you got to experience that with our dear friend Armin.
Wow. So I'm a little distracted.
Bagel.
No, she's doing great.
Good girl.
Yeah, but I feel like I could have gone down one old electronic music rabbit hole, and that would have been enough. The fact that I had to keep going down electronic music rabbit holes, that's Bagel.
I'm sure that there are...
Bagel,
what are you doing? I'm sure that there are lots of people out there who will actually really, really appreciate those rabbit holes. So I'm glad that you had that.
Okay, and then, so the next episode, hi Bagel, is going to be... We don't quite know what it's going to be, but it's going to be our year-end episode, and there's a world in which it might involve a DJ mix.
A lot could happen.
Yep. So do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yes, I do. I want to... Are you okay?
Yeah.
Bagel.
No, she's so
being
extra emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah, so while Bagel's being emotional...
Okay, I'll do some talking. First of all, I want to say thank you. She just hit you.
That's love.
Okay. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to Moby Pod and engages with us and sends questions and comments.
The Bagel hitting the microphone with the tail is the funniest thing.
I mean, she's just directly on it. It's like she's trying to.
I'm trying to imagine Jonathan editing that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to multitask. We're like, drink tea, play with Bagel, listen to you.
Okay.
This is professionalism, right?
This is as professional as it gets. Good job. Oh my God. She's trying to. Okay. Bagel, you're being a big distraction right now.
So you're saying thank you to people.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody who listens to Moby Pod, who engages with posts and on YouTube, and who sends us nice messages. I also want to say thank you to... What? Nice messages? Oh, because we get a lot of mean ones too.
I just ignore anything mean.
I wish I could. I read them to my therapist. So thank you for that. And then also I want to say thank you to Erin Stehler, who does the video for this podcast. and to Jonathan Nesvadba, who edits the audio like a champion. And I want to say thank you to our dear, dear friends at Human Content who put this podcast out into the world. And thank you to Bagel's Tale for making sure the microphones are on. And thank you to you for being you.
And we'll talk to you in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, have a wonderful holiday, however you choose to celebrate.
Yeah.
Even if you don't choose to celebrate, lots of people don't.
Just have a nice time in general.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Bye.